everyone, and welcome to Off the Cuff, where the headlines come to life. And I am very pleased to have with us today, as our guest on Off the Cuff, a lawyer, a comedian extraordinaire, a film director, a comedy festival producer, and yes, a soon-to-be professor, all in one. Please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Amer Zahr. Thank you so much for being with us on Off the Cuff.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You have an entire package. You have a law degree, you're a funny guy, you're cute, and you're smart. I mean, wow, all in one package. So
still single.
And still single. Well, that was the prelude here. Still single, ladies.
Okay.
You just came off of a wonderful festival, a comedy festival that you just produced. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I created and I produced this festival called the 1001 Laughs Dearborn Comedy Festival. We hold it at the Arab American National Museum in Dearborn. It's a partnership between me and the museum. This is the second year that we held it. We invited this year, we had 13 comedians from around the country come and perform. Almost all of them were Arab Americans. We focus on Arab American comedians, but the festival is open to comedians of any background. And it was a great success. I mean, we sold out every show. Over 500 people came through and watched the shows.
Well, you're a funny guy.
Well, you know, but luckily we had a lot of comedians and artists who were willing to work with us and come and share their talents with the community here. And so the community really appreciated it. Everybody who came had a good time, and I couldn't be happier. I mean, the festival was a great success, and we hope to keep doing this to showcase Arab American talent, and also as kind of something to give to the community every year to say, hey, you know, there are Arab Americans out there doing this. Come watch us, come support us, and have fun, and that's what happened this year, and I couldn't be happier.
And I think it's wonderful too. Not only the fact that you go, you get entertained, you see all these comedians, but you have to be able to laugh at yourself, especially with what's going on. And I think laughter is a cure for a lot of people that are anxious, people that are uncomfortable with the things that we're hearing out there, especially in the media. So I think it's a wonderful medium to bring it down to earth and to make people connect in a different way. Do you find that people appreciate that as well?
Well, comedy is this unifying thing. I mean, laughter is universal, but also comedy serves to humanize people. So when we can laugh about ourselves and people see that we can laugh about ourselves, it shows that we're just like everybody else. And it also lets people become, you know, a lot of non-Arabs, especially white people in this country, are kind of maybe sometimes uncomfortable with talking about Arabs or Muslims or our issues or our culture or whatever. So when we talk about it in a funny way, it kind of breaks down a lot of those barriers. And at the same time, sometimes we can let people know stuff about us that they didn't know before. When you can make people laugh, they listen to you. So that's what a lot of the Arab American comedians are doing. Some of the Arab American comedians, though, are just doing stuff that has nothing to do with being Arab American. They're just trying to be funny. So I mean, we're just trying to showcase all those different art forms, and there was a whole spectrum of comedians this week at the festival. But there is definitely a thread or a flavor that goes through many of the comics that is trying to teach while they're making you laugh, and this is a very effective tool. You know, you even see sometimes business leaders do it. If they're about to start a really long, boring meeting, they'll tell a joke. They're not always successful, but that's the idea. It kind of makes everybody calm down and relax. Humor and comedy has that same effect, and so we're trying to use it a little bit to our advantage. The number one problem Arabs in America have is still not fully being seen as human beings, frankly, and fully being seen.
It's a statistic.
Yeah, as fully being seen as people who belong in this country. Even though we've been here there's Arabs have been here, some Arabs have been here for over 100 years. But nobody knows that, and you know, we're not all named Osama, we're not all named Muhammad. We have different complexions and different names and different kind of things. So this is comedy can serve to kind of broaden other people's horizons about us.
Bring some normalcy.
Hopefully.
To the concept.
Hopefully.
You also, well, tell me about the audience. Was it a mixed audience, or was it mostly Arab Americans? What was your audience?
The audience
like?
was mostly Arab Americans, but there were, like, you know, I hosted a couple of the shows, so. But there were enough non-Arabs to point them out in the audience and have fun with them and that kind of thing.
You did.
The audience, of course we did, yeah. I mean, the audience was overwhelmed, was mostly Arab, but there was a mix in there, enough so that we could kind of showcase the diversity of the audiences.
Well, that's wonderful. And this is your second and hopefully your third. I know I attended the first and unfortunately wasn't able to attend this last one, but the first one was amazing. So I'm sure this was over the top. So I look forward to next year's as well.
Yeah, fall of 2015 will be the next festival.
So, and at the Arab American Museum, or are you outgrowing that?
That is the plan. No.
Okay.
We love to keep holding it at the museum. I mean, we support their work and we want them to support our work. And if you're going to have an Arab American Comedy Festival, what better place to hold it than the Arab American National Museum? So we'd love to keep doing it there.
Absolutely. You are the civil Arab as well. Talk to me about that. I know. One of the persons that I'm a fan of was someone that actually inspired you to do the blog. So talk to us about this. It's a blog that you do weekly. Is it weekly now, or?
It's weekly. Sometimes I'm lazy, so sometimes it doesn't happen
sometimes
weekly.
It's monthly.
Sometimes it's yearly. But
well, you got a lot going on.
Yeah,
so
no,
it's your
but
excuse.
I started this blog about 5 years ago. It really was inspired by I was seeing other people's blogs out there. I wasn't really into blogs or what they were. I said, who's going to read anything of this? And then one night I was watching TV like I always do late at night, and Jon Stewart came on. And there was a show where he brought on a couple Palestinians, and I'm Palestinian, and they were just normal, regular Palestinians speaking on the news, not screaming or anything, and he was listening to them and having a real discussion with them. And that never happens for us, I mean, it's sad that I get excited, when there's Arabs or Palestinians on TV and they're just talking in a normal voice and they actually put them on TV. So I wrote a column about that. And I decided, okay, let me share this with everybody. So I started the blog, and people read it and they liked it. So it kind of got addictive. I kept writing more things about either things that are happening in the news or things that happen in my life, all somehow obviously tied to the Arab American experience. So that's the idea of that blog. And like I said, it's addictive. When people are reading, you want to write more. And so I kept writing, and people keep reading and all that kind of stuff. And I wrote a lot about Palestine on the blog too. And I recently compiled a lot of my writings into a book called Being Palestinian Makes Me Smile, which now I take to all my shows, and it's been pretty successful as well. So the blog has created a lot of opportunities, but it's also a reason for me to always be engaged.
Sure.
So I'm always out there, and it kind of causes me to be creative and write things about things that I see. And I always try to throw a little comedy in there, again, to lighten the mood and also to get people to listen a little more closely. And it's been pretty effective.
No, it really has. The conference that we do, the Images and Perceptions, you were a wonderful guest and comedian. I think people you gave them a lot to think about. And of course, that was definitely more non-Arab than Arab. But,
yes.
But I think people need to listen to that. And even though it's really hilarious and it's funny, what I love about your comedy is there's meaning to it, and it makes people think. There's a spark there that makes them think. You also delved into the film industry, which is something that has been a passion of mine for a long time. I used to work with the Census Bureau. I was a supervisor with the Census Bureau, oh my God, 1990, I think it was. And we were talking about the box, and of course your film is called We're Not White, and it focuses on not having a box with the Census Bureau in terms of the Arab American community. So tell us about your film, tell us what inspired you to actually focus on something like that, which is very, very pertinent and has been a conversation for quite a long time.
Yeah, well, I mean, so the film itself is a mix between seeing me on stage doing stand-up, and then we have academic experts and man-on-the-street type stuff. So it's all kinds of different elements in the documentary. And the idea is that we're not white. The American government, as you know, classifies Arab Americans as white people. But we're the furthest thing. I mean, white people don't think we're white. I mean, that's what I found when I did the film, that I would stop white people on the street and I say, hey, do you have any Arab friends? And they would say yes. And I said, do you think they're white? I'd say no. So white people don't think we're white. And that's probably the only test that really matters. I mean, if white people don't think you're white, you're not getting in the club, so you're not white. And so socially and politically, we're definitely not white. But legally, we're white. And so it creates this terrible kind of limbo that we're in, where we are a minority on the ground, but since we're not counted, And since we're not really considered a minority legally, we don't have the same tools in our toolbox as every other minority has. And it creates major problems. So let's say somebody feels like they were discriminated against in their job because they were an Arab. Well, when they go down to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission office to file a complaint, the bureaucrat sitting behind the desk intaking their complaint doesn't have Arab as one of their things to check off as to why they were discriminated against. So the process works against us in many ways. We're just not on the radar when it comes to the bureaucracy and legal stuff. That might be okay if we were some group of people that nobody knew about, but we're not. We're the opposite. We're a group of people that everybody knows about. We're on the news all the time. We are definitely visible in a social and political way, but legally invisible. And so it creates this major problem. And it creates ridiculous conclusions. So according to the United States Census Bureau, the city of Dearborn is 89.1% white. We all know that's not true. I mean, it only takes 5 minutes to go through Dearborn. There's no white people. But Arabs are white, so the city is looked at as 89.1% white. So it creates major problems for us. Not being counted also creates a lack of political power. So when a politician says something terrible about Arabs or Muslims, which they do all the time, nobody can walk up to that politician and say, hey, maybe you shouldn't say that. You have 30 or 40,000 Arabs in your district that you just offended. Since we're not counted at all, our voices are seen as individual and not as collective. When a politician sees one Arab American, he doesn't think that that's 30,000 Arab Americans. He thinks it's just that one Arab American. And so it really, really is detrimental to us. Aside from the fact that it also creates a sense of unbelonging. Like every Arab American has that experience where they're filling out a form and they don't see their thing. And
so do you fill out other?
I usually either fill out other and write an Arab American, or sometimes if I'm feeling particularly like frisky that day, I will draw a little box and write Arab American next to it and check that. But I don't check the white box, even though some forms instruct you to check the white box if you're Arab, if you're of Middle Eastern descent. But we're not white. There's nothing about us that is white, and we're just different. We do things different. I grew up with white people, and I grew up around all white people, and I love white people. My best friends when I was growing up were white. See how weird that sounds? See how weird it sounds when you say that? I mean, if somebody says something, I love black people, I have a lot of black friends, everybody goes, oh, wow, that's so nice. Wow, you do like black people. Oh, I love Arabs, I have a lot of friends. Oh, you say it around white people, it sounds weird, right? I love white people, I have a lot of white friends, but that's what they say about us. In any case, we're just different than they are. We're different.
The first time I heard that phrase, my daughter was in high school, and she says, yeah, there was a couple of, white kids. And I'm going, what do you mean white kids? And I'd never heard that phrase before, because to me that was just, that was us. That was, normal. So for me that was sort of an eye-opener. But we have a little a skit that we want to show about your film, We Are Not White, and here it is.
Arabs are just like black people. We're the same. We get profiled. We get blamed for stuff that we don't do. We scare the hell out of white people. We have big families, lots of cousins, Sunday dinner. We do all that kind of stuff. Like, your family's really big, right? Like, the way you know you're one of us is if your family's so big that you're older than your uncle. If you ever took your uncle to Chuck E. Cheese, you might be one of us. Now, Barack Obama proved that a black guy could get elected president. Barack Obama proved that a black guy could get elected president if he went to Columbia and Harvard, if he's written 3 books, if his name is Barack, it's not Tyrone, if he's from Hawaii, not Detroit, if his mom is a white lady named Ann from Kansas, and if he's like the best speaker we've ever seen in our lives, then a black guy can become president. George W. Bush proved any white guy can become president.
So, doing this film, what effect do you think it had, and the individuals that you had in this film as well, normal Dearborn people basically, talking about their feelings of not having a box? How do you think this has been effective in maybe getting to that point?
Well, so the film is done, but it's not out in the world yet. We're submitting it to festivals and that kind of thing. We're just in the beginning stages. I actually interviewed people from all around the country. So I had academic experts who were from Washington, D.C. and Detroit in many different places, and we would walk the streets. Actually, we walked the streets in D.C. In the summer, and we would just stop people, mostly non-Arabs. We'd ask them if they knew any Arabs. We did this one funny thing actually, where we asked people to name a famous Arab, and we would go. And we would tell them, name a famous black person, and they would rattle off black people, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Michael Jordan. Say, name a famous Latino person, and they'd rattle off. They'd mostly say Jennifer
J-Lo.
Lopez, yeah, basically. But there was something. And we would say to them, name a famous Asian, and it was usually Jackie Chan. Everybody said Jackie Chan. And then we'd tell them, name a famous Arab, and they went silent. Nobody could name anything. And,
Omar Sharif.
well, we can, okay?
well,
but other people can't.
Sort of mainstream.
Kind of, but nobody really. Omar Sharif, remember, anyone who's under,
Yeah,
I mean,
okay,
no
forget
offense
it.
to
Just
Siham,
keep
but
going.
anyone who's under 40 probably
Keep
has no
going.
idea
All
who
right,
Omar
Ahmed,
Sharif
keep
is.
going.
They couldn't name anybody. Then finally, I got them to. They could name people, but it was embarrassing. The only names that came to mind were Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein.
Oh, Lord.
They couldn't name any positive ones. Remember, all the other ones they named before were positive because, of course, people want to say positive things. They're nice. But when it came to us, it was just silence. They didn't know what to say until they were pushed. And even then later, they would announce some people who they thought were Arab, but they weren't even Arab, Indian or whatever. So the point is, we are because we are kind of stuck in this whiteness, and we've never really been seen as a minority, either by others or sometimes even by ourselves, that being Arab is not kind of like the first thing that people say about themselves sometimes when they're Arab. So we know of a lot of Arab American celebrities, but a lot of them even weren't saying that they were Arab for a long time because it could be a detriment to them becoming famous. And this is all goes back to the box. When we don't have a box, we are not in the mix. We are not in the discussion with everybody else. We're in this white circle, which kind of is an amalgam of a lot of different things. It really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. And being in that is bad for us because we're not white. White people don't think we're white. And minorities know we're a minority, but when we sit down legally at the table, we don't have the same kind of tools in our toolbox as everybody else. This is a major problem for us. It's the #1 civil rights issue as far as I'm concerned. So as an Arab American who's concerned with civil rights and concerned with our rights in general, it was very important to me to talk about this. And what better way to do it through comedy and through a documentary movie to kind of push it. Now, there's many efforts right now, I think, pushing towards getting a box in 2020. So hopefully we'll get one. And hopefully it says the right thing, like Arab and not just like Middle Eastern or something like that. I hate that word, Middle Eastern. So hopefully it says the right thing and it gets us down the right path. But the most important thing is to start getting counted. And once we get counted, we can, hopefully for many generations to come, we will be in the discussion like everybody else.
Well, let's hope that happens, and that conversation, like I said, has been happening forever.
Do you think you're white?
You know what? Do I think I'm white? I'm Arab American for sure.
Okay.
I was born and raised here, of course. So I guess I want to think of myself as just a human being that belongs to the human race.
Okay, fine, but you know, we live in America. It's the hyphenated culture.
Yeah, but I would
everybody
like a
has
box.
something in front of them.
I think I think we have a box for Latinos and what have you, but maybe brown, white, whatever. But I think the distinction is important too, and I think not only the distinction on the box, but I think the distinction for many other reasons as well, because you're not, like exactly what you said, you're not represented, and that is something that is of concern. So am I white, am I black, am I brown? I don't know. I'm Arab American, and I would like that to be recognized.
And something we need to also tell people, especially in our community, is sometimes there's a too simplistic view of race in our community, and this comes from not having a box for a long time and just trying to assimilate, is that I'll sometimes encounter Arab Americans and I'll say to them, are you white? And they'll say to me, well, I'm not black. But black and white are not the only two things. We live in a multiracial society, and race doesn't mean the color of your skin. It's a social construct that means
many black individuals who are Arab as well.
Yes, you do. But I mean, but for instance, we do it in our even when we talk. Sometimes Arab Americans, for instance, as Arab Americans, when we're talking with each other in Arabic or in English, and we say the word, if we look and we say, yeah, I was hanging out with some Americans last night. What do we mean?
Non-Arabs, of course.
But what do we mean? Do you mean black Americans? No.
No.
You mean white people.
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. And
We
that's
use-
the perception. It's all images and perceptions.
Right. We use that term to mean white people. So in many ways, we're internalizing this idea that white equals American. We need to get away from that. We're all Americans. You know, American is a civic identity. It's not a racial identity. And so we need to get our own box. We need to be in the mix with everybody else. And we need to become comfortable in our own skin that we are who we are. And we become comfortable with that and talk from that point of view instead of talking from trying to assimilate into another point of view, which we're just simply not a part of.
No, I agree. And I think you were part of the conference that we had last April. We had Edward James Olmos, and I think his message really resonated, talking about the fact that we are all different in in our own individual way, but yet we all are still connected as the human race. And I think that resonated really, really incredibly with me. And so I remember that all the time. Somehow, some way, regardless of whether you're Latino, African American, Asian, we're all connected somehow. And there's another film producer, Tom Shadyac. I think you're familiar with him too. And he just did a documentary called I Am, which I'm fascinated with. And he does talk about how, you know, and it sounds a little bit sort of out there, and you know, you talk about the universe and what have you, but how we're all sort of connected within the universe, and we're different, but yet we're all related. We're all connected, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, and what have you. So, you know, I don't want to be too idealistic, but reality just tells us that. And so I think if we can just sort of focus on something like that, create, you know, focusing on our individual aspects, on who we are, and you know, maintaining our identity, but also remembering we're part of the bigger scheme here, and I think that's important.
Well, look, if there were no boxes at all, maybe that'd be a nice world. But there are boxes.
I mean, we
and
need
as
our
long
own
as there are
box.
boxes, I want a box.
We want a box. I agree. I totally agree. We need all those boxes, but we need to look at them as one big unit. You are also a lawyer, and recently we found out that you're going to be teaching at the University of Detroit, Mercy. What are you going to be teaching? Are you going to be teaching these lawyers how to be comedians and how to
So let me clarify.
To work the courtroom?
Yeah, let me clarify first so I don't get sued or anything. I'm not a practicing attorney. I don't practice law. I never have. I started doing comedy while I was in law school. I did graduate from law school, though. My mom tells people I'm a lawyer.
Well, you told me that, absolutely.
Yeah. My mom tells people I'm a lawyer, but I'm not. I'm a comedian. But I do also have a master's in Middle East Studies. So I did a lot of work on international law and also Arab Americans in the law, especially with the "we're not white" thing. So the class that I'm going to teach at the University of Detroit Mercy, starting in January 2015.
It has something to do with comedy.
No, I mean, no. It's going to be called Arab Americans and the Law.
Oh.
It's a survey of the journey of Arab Americans through the legal process over the last 100 years in this country, and it has a lot to do with the whiteness. Remember, we are white because we fought to become white 100 years ago, because the laws in this country said that in order to be naturalized as a citizen, you had to be white. Those were the laws until 1952. I mean, we think that was a long time ago. It wasn't really a long time ago. Until 1952, you had to be white in order to get admitted to this country for naturalization purposes. That's why, for instance, people who come from India, they didn't really start coming till after 1952, because they tried to come before 1952 and courts told them that they weren't white. That's why Japanese and Chinese immigrants, even though they came in the early 1900s and America put a stop to that through the Chinese Exclusion Act, they didn't like that, they also couldn't come again until the late 50s because they were clearly not white. Now, when we came in the teens, a lot of us came in the teens, what would happen was you would show up at Ellis Island and an immigration officer would examine you as to whether or not you could be admitted for naturalization. In other words, he was deciding whether or not you were white. And so Arabs, we're whitish, you know, we're just a little off, but we're white enough that there became a controversy, are Arabs white, not white? And we ended up in court. Many different Arab American plaintiffs ended up in court petitioning the government for whiteness. Remember, they petitioned the government for whiteness because that's how you got in. The only way you could get admitted to become a citizen was if you were white. And so we won, for lack of a better term, whiteness. And so we were considered white and that's why today we are still considered white, because we won that legal battle. But now in today's world, it means something totally different. And so for the purposes of today's world, and even back then they weren't white, but they just fought for it and they got it. In today's world, though, all these different layers of race in America means that we're definitely not white. So we need to shed this whiteness, legal whiteness. But we're actually white because we fought for it legally through the legal process. And so this class that I'm teaching is going to go through a lot of that. Those cases, I mean, there's many, many cases that are happening during that time. And goes all the way up until today through, still some cases where an Arab wants to claim discrimination, but he has a hard time because he says because legally he's white. And the United States legal system doesn't recognize
discrimination against white people.
Well, especially not by white people.
By white people.
So it doesn't recognize discrimination by white people against other white people. So if you're an Arab saying you were discriminated against by white people, they might say to you, well, how were they discriminated against you? They're white. There's no such thing as white on white discrimination. Well, that's the problem that we face, right? And so there were many cases that came up questioning this kind of concept. And so we're going to be going through all these different things in the class and kind of fleshing out all these concepts and getting a better idea of where they came from and how they came about. There's long foundations to these things. So that's kind of what we're going to be going through in that class.
That's interesting. So when are you going to be starting this
So the class starts in January. It's going to be taught from January to April at University of Detroit Mercy.
Okay, wonderful. So so they have to be law students, right? To be
Yes. I mean, if anybody wants to come and just sit in on the class, I'd be happy to have them sit in on the class.
Good,
but
so I can come and sit in on
no
your class?
problem. You got to show up every week, though, Siham. But yes, you can come and sit in on the
Or
class.
I'm going to get an E, right?
Okay, yeah.
Talk to me about your future plans. Where are you going from here?
Well, I'm still performing all the time, going out many weekends a month and performing. I want to write more. I'm really going to concentrate on this movie over the next year and hopefully be speaking a lot and lecturing a lot about the movie and about these issues that affect Arab Americans deeply. And I want to keep doing the comedy. Obviously, that's the most important thing to me, is keep getting out there, performing. That's my high, out on stage, performing for people and having them laugh. And so I'm just going to keep going in the direction that I'm going. It could be more movies, more books, but this is the way that I'm going right now, and I'm really enjoying it. And I couldn't ask for anything better, and I'm just so happy right now. So I'm going to keep going down the road I'm going down.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I think comedy can bring a message home so much more than any other medium, and I think your form of comedy is sometimes intense, and it really makes you think, and I absolutely love it. We've got one more minute, but your book. The title of your book again?
So the title of my book is called Being Palestinian Makes Me Smile, which if you see us on the news, you wouldn't believe it, but it is true. Being Palestinian Makes Me Smile. It's available on Amazon.com.
Okay. And
or if you come to one of my shows, you can always find my show schedule at my website, which is just my first and last name.com, AMERZAHR.com. And of course, read my blog, please, civilarab.com. I mean, I have all these things going on. Like me on Facebook, all these different things, and you'll find out what's going on with me. But yeah, the book's available on Amazon, and all the rest of my work is out there in the world. So I love it when people read it and let me know what they think.
Wonderful. Well, I wish you best of luck with you're an author, a filmmaker, soon to be professor. We're going to call you Professor Zahr.
That's fine. No problem.
And just keep getting that word out there in a wonderful, entertaining, and comedic way. I think people get it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thanks, Siham.
for being with us, and thank you all for being here on Off the Cuff, where the headlines do come to life. We'll see you next time.